I invested in a RED Komodo back in September last year. Since then, me and my team have been utilizing the camera to its full potential, shooting documentaries, branded films, ad campaigns, and more. For a camera that fits in the palm of my hand, of course when it's not rigged, the Komodo definitely packs a punch. The ultimate question though is, do you need one as of April 2024? I've divided this video into a couple of parts that you can see outlined here somewhere, and you can skip to the one that interests you. So let's get to it. Before we begin though, please press the subscribe button underneath. It should be glowing right now, calling you. So starting with my favorite features of the Komodo. Undoubtedly, that's the 6K RAW shooting capability. I never shoot in anything lower than that anymore. For one, because why not have the best image quality of your projects, and secondly because that future-proofs your work to some extent and it gives you much more real estate to work with. The dynamic range of this camera is also very nice. You don't have to worry about having your highlights clipped or losing any information in your frame, and I find the image that comes out of the Komodo to be very clean, clear, and just sharp overall, but that's depending on the lenses that you use as well. You don't lose information in the details when you zoom in the frame, to see your subject, as opposed to like mirrorless camera, let's say. Because like if you zoom in right now, you're definitely going to see some distortions. Third thing that I love is the global shutter. Especially for me who loves the look of handheld shots, this really makes a difference. If you don't know what a global shutter means, it's basically the exact opposite of a rolling shutter that a mirrorless camera uses. And when you shoot handheld on a mirrorless, you often have this like jello distorted look of the vertical lines because the information isn't captured like in the same time, but the shutter is like rolling each frame and there is like a slight delay, and with Komodo that utilize global shutter, the information is captured in the same time, like in a photo, and it's just much more natural. Okay, moving on to what I don't like about the Komodo. To me, the Komodo is a two-person camera. One of the biggest reasons I purchased the Komodo in the first place was to shoot client projects in a control environment, like on a set. That means that there is a camera assistant rigging the camera, pulling the focus, and making sure everything works so that the DP can focus on the composition and movement. Which is great, I mean, that's why I bought it. But sometimes, I have this desire to go film something just for the sake of it, like, back in the day when I was starting out. But in order to use this camera to its full potential, I need a pretty hefty rig and a ton of accessory, time to set it up. But by the time I get to it, I just don't feel as inspired anymore. And of course, this can be just me. You might have a ton of fun, rigging your camera. And I do too, but I mean, when you do it really all fun, it sometimes starts to feel like a chore. And sometimes I just want a camera where I can, turn a button on, go shoot, because everything else just feels like too much work and the passion can be kind of lost. Speaking of accessories and parts, you need a very long list of them in order to make the camera do its thing. I've created a video about the rig that I use most of the times with, I've listed all of the parts, so you can, watch it there if that's your thing. And yeah, another thing is that the files, of course, when shooting in 6K RAW, which I often do, as I said, they're pretty huge, so you do need to invest in storage as well. And the last thing I don't really like is that it's not really great in low light. It's not like Sony, but that's fixable in the edit most of the time, because if you're shooting RAW, then you can tweak everything later to get as much information as possible and preserve the clarity of the image, and with a little bit of noise reduction in DaVinci, you're pretty good to go. Which leads us to the editing stage. Now, to be honest, I had a bit of a hard time understanding the RED editing workflow at first, because every file gets put into its own individual folder, and that really used to drive me insane. But now I'm used to it, and now our workflow with my editor normally consists of making proxies and then cutting from there, which has just been really smooth. Speaking of editing, Artlist is generously sponsoring this channel for the whole year. So let me quickly tell you about my newest favorite tool that I found on their platform. So it's this simple sound effect. combined with this background animation that you've been seeing throughout the video. Because you see, I've been really searching for something simple to put in between the video chapters or when presenting some important information. We tried a bunch of things, but I think that I finally found it. And for me, maintaining consistency within my branding is very important. So if you're currently stuck in an edit and you want to take it to the next level, check out Artlist. They have a bunch of tools for all of your projects, from music and sound effects to all kinds of animations, graphics, and even stock footage, which has saved me more times than I can count. Artlist is simple to use and it has been our go-to lately when it comes to all things editing for those YouTube videos or client projects. So if you want to try it out, use the link in the description below to sign for an annual subscription and you'll get 2 free months added on top, and I think that's a pretty sweet deal. Now let's continue with the color grading possibilities of the Komodo, which might be one of the biggest reasons why I got it. We filmed a branded documentary for Corona 2 years ago and I rented the Komodo for the shoot. I fell in love with the almost endless possibilities you have in post, and you can just tweak the colors in so many different directions. And yeah, RED really knows what they're doing. Or should I say Nikon from now on? Anyways, now let's talk cost. On its own, the Komodo isn't a very expensive camera, and I know some of you might say the opposite, but listen to me when I tell you that. When you compare this to like actual cinema cameras like the Arri Alexa or Sony Venice, it quickly becomes a very affordable option and an entry point to the world of cinema cameras. Now, the bigger cost of this comes when you start buying all the parts and tools required in order to actually operate the camera. Because unlike mirrorless, where you don't need much more than a lens and a monitor to operate it, this really, you require just a lot of stuff. And basically, I think right now you can set a pretty good rig at about $8,000, whereas with this thing, you just need a whole bag of like parts and accessories in order to rig it. And of course, every project is probably going to require a slightly different rig. So yeah, you just need to buy a lot of extra stuff. I'd say currently, like on the current market, for example, I bought the Komodo secondhand, and of course all of the parts I used, I bought them new, but in the current market, maybe you're looking at about $8,000 investment for like a full rig, but without the lens, which is, I think, solid. Okay, I want to share with you when I'd recommend you actually getting a Komodo. I'd recommend it in 3 different scenarios. One, if the productions you shoot for have a starting budget of around 8 to 10K going to 20, or you have multiple shoots per month working with a small team of, let's say, a first AC, a gaffer, or you're shooting projects with the sole idea of licensing your footage later and you need a high picture quality. I specifically bought mine for client work because it ups the production value and you can charge a bit more because it's a RED. And when you use that magic word, clients, they are just like, oh, that's professional. So you can probably up your budgets by around 20–25%. And overall, I think the Komodo or the Komodo X, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the difference isn't, for me personally, that great to, pay like a couple of $1,000s on top of what I already have. But that's a topic for another video. But, the Komodo family, it sits in a very interesting place in the camera market. It just sits somewhere in the middle, it's past the mirrorless, but it's, before the, real deal cinema cameras. It just utilizes features from both places, which just makes it a very interesting hybrid kind of camera for like smaller to mid-sized production. Now, when I wouldn't recommend you buying it is if you only have one-off shoots here and there. Better rent it. Only buy it if you're constantly booked for shoots over the 10K range, because that way your investment can be quickly turned around. Now, if you're on the market for a new camera and are wondering what to get, so you stumbled upon that video to see if the Komodo is your thing, I have a couple of other recommendations. If you're a solo shooter with a Komodo, you can't really focus on movement, pulling focus, and operating a gimbal rig at the same time. Unless you're some kind of prodigy, in which case, please call me. I'd recommend the Sony FX3 for social content and documentaries that go up to 10K, and the Sony FX6 for up to 15K budgets and mainly branded documentaries. Or if you're using the Canon ecosystem, the C70 is also a great camera, but again, I'd say up to like 8K budgets. Now, of course, this is, based on my experience with owning a film production company and kind of seeing the types of projects, that client want and the type of quality that is required. Because for most of the, Instagram reels that, your clients might want you to produce, you don't need a Komodo. I mean, it's a bit of an overkill because like the video you can upload on Instagram is still 1080. So yeah, and I just really think that there are other cameras out there which are great, and especially like the FX6 and the C70 that I mentioned, they have built-in ND filters, for example, which is also a huge thing. They have autofocus. Like on this thing, you just, as I said, in order to make the best of it, you need 2 people. Yeah, and anyway, it's a great camera. As every new camera that you buy, you grow with it, you learn with it, and I still have a lot of things that I need to learn about it. So I'm kind of excited to do like more passion projects this year, but I think I really want to try and test a couple of new things when it comes to, movement, just shooting a bit more everyday stuff apart from, having everything planned. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, those are my 2 cents, and that's today's video. And please remember that a camera is an important asset for you to do your job. But in the beginning, it's better to rent and test out different cameras instead of buying one. And you often notice how different cameras work great for different projects. So yeah, the Komodo is fantastic, as well as a bunch of other cameras. So choose yours wisely. And yeah, I'm excited to see your journeys. Peace out.